one of the things that we can do to be proactive about our own lives and about our own work, especially these days, is to make our own work, to make our own stuff and put it up there. It was much less possible in the old days. That's both good and bad, because part of what has gone by the wayside is the quality of production. The modern generation doesn't look for production values in the same way that I did. I would never put out a piece of work for anybody to see as a film that looks like the stuff on YouTube. Badly lit, poor sound, lousy composition. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to people who watch this stuff anymore. People who make films hardly think about composition. I mean, the big guys do, but they don't. I mean, look at the YouTube stuff. It's crap. But it has interesting content, and content is king. And because they're only going to watch it for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So, why can't we make our own stuff? Why can't we make 5 or 7 minute films? And I think it's, for most of us in this room, that's the way we should go. Less possible here in the desert than when I was in Los Angeles. I could draw on 30 years of friendships and people who owed me favors. I could call up a DP and say, Eric, I want to do a film. I need a day of your time. I've given you a lot of work. Don't give me any shit. Come here for free. And he'd do it. And he'd bring his crew. And he'd bring his lights. And I could call up a gaffer because I've hired a gaffer 8,000 times. And he owes me. I don't know that same group out here, and I don't know if those people exist out here. But one of the things we should do is find them.
We have them in the,
And
we have them in
create
our
our
organization.
create our own cooperative. Make our own movies. Make our own work. Make our own work come to life. Will it make you money? Maybe not. Probably not. Will it bring you joy? You betcha. Will it be the fruition of your work? Yes. If you're writing a screenplay, a 5-minute screenplay, and you see it up there, and it's good, and people laugh, or people cry, or people respond, nothing better in life.
But isn't it true, it's not quite as expensive now, right, with all the new
The tools are
technology?
cheap.
To me, it's a.
You get a green screen.
Look at that little stupid thing. You can make a movie with that.
Exactly.
There
Well-
are film schools here in the desert, are there?
Yeah.
Film students?
Yeah, there's
I
a
don't
new,
know.
there's a new,
I
there's
haven't-
2 new
I'm-
programs.
We haven't put in one, maybe.
I'm so new out here, I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff out here.
There's a lot of stuff in the desert, and actually College of the Desert is in the process of just opening a new program because they're going to be working with Palm Springs Unified School District, and she called the other day or sent me an email, and so we're going to be going and having a meeting with them on what's happening there.
They've never had that there, right? They've
no,
never had.
College of the Desert's never
Right.
had it.
This is all brand new.
UCR has a program, and so I've been talking to them. We're
Yeah,
still
UC Riverside
trying to
has a
break ground,
program,
yeah.
absolutely.
They're out
It
here.
seems like a film student might want to help work with us.
Well, and
Absolutely.
the
That's
thing
where-
is that Coachella Valley
I
Unified
have-
School District has a tremendous program, and that's where he got all the students with equipment to shoot everything for UI Skies Cooking, because the school districts, but nobody thought Coachella Valley Unified had a system as big as they do, because we were aware that Cathedral City and Palm Springs had it, but it's amazing that Right now, Indio High School is 2 years into a program. Indio Middle School has a feeder program that's feeding into that. And so there's a lot that's out here. Paul and a lot of our members already have things. We have like 3 members that have studios, you know, so.
If I have any value to this group at all, and I hope I do, one of my best values would be I'm highly skilled at production. And we'd be more than happy to help out anybody that needs to learn or needs assistance on doing production.
Well, that's one of the things that we had talked about when we met, was like, you know, with the Script Fest, and I'll let Catherine give us some more information on that, was the possibility that once we get all these actors into this, and we're going to be moving in January into the filming of these, maybe filming these Script Fests, maybe it's something that if 10 pages of your script is getting filmed, it could become a teaser. And then, you know, we could use that to help advertise or promote your films, you know, and things like that. So that's one aspect of Script Fest, you know, reading 10 to 12 pages of your script, you know, and putting it out there. We're running into some problems because people are saying, you know, when you're asked to submit 10 or 12 pages, it's your decision to decide which of those 10 or 12. Don't go sending a script to somebody and saying,
I have to comment on this, because looking at your, and it makes sense, this, down at the bottom of your syllabus here. Be aware that most people who read your script will read about the first 10 pages and perhaps the last 2 or 3 pages. You don't grab the reader in the first 5, you're done, which we've all known and we've all heard. So I'm sitting here thinking about the Script Fest. Maybe we should focus on the first 10 pages of people's scripts, because they are the most important. Originally I thought, oh, let's extract 10 to 12 pages from wherever you want. I was talking with Andrew Kaplan about this.
Well, if you have a writing contest, they always ask for the first
Yeah.
page 1 through 10
You
or
know about
something.
novel
They never
writing.
say just anywhere in your novel.
No,
Yeah.
you
So,
can't do that because.
I would like to take a vote, because it's strongly my opinion that we should focus on the first 10 pages of people's scripts. And having said that, there are a lot of mistakes to be made in those first 10 pages. We did this, I don't know if you saw this, we did this a couple weeks ago over at La Quinta. I'll give it to you. And we did 4 scripts, and the fellow's a good writer, but I would say maybe the first
page and a half.
6 pages, more than that, went on and on and on, was all the setup and all the, and the actors stood up there just flipping pages, waiting to say something, and it was,
That script will never get read by a producer or an actor.
I was in the back looking around, and he's a good writer, this guy's smart, but I was looking around, people going, oh, and they're looking at their phones, because it went on and on and on, so what about first 10 good pages of everybody's script in this room, and that's how we should do a Script Fest.
A Taste of Reality, Mel Brooks' most successful movie is Spaceballs.
Oh, that's scary.
That's paid his bills for a long time.
Maybe that's for that
Well,
15-year-old male.
It's still being shown on television.
I was told it was first 10 pages because the producers knew that the audience had 10 minutes to watch a movie and decide whether they were going to stay or leave. And they said producers know that. So if you can't keep the audience past 10 minutes, he's out of money and they're out of the theater.
And it's all about the readers. We're talking about.
It's
the people that
mostly the
read.
readers and most of the producers. One of my big failures as a director, as a film director, and I don't consider myself a particularly successful film director. I never made the transition between being a theater director and a film director properly, although I love film. And part of it is, when you go into a theater and you sit down in a live performance, you don't expect to be wowed in those first 10 minutes. You have an expectation of the drama being built. You have an expectation of peaks and valleys. You have an expectation of emotion being given to you, not immediate excitement. I never got past that. That's really what I love. I love building. That's not true in film.
The audience has a clicker in their hand.
Who's had the
Armed
clicker in
and
their hand?
dangerous.
But I'm thinking also, people in here, I know I am, I think Mike is, are thinking about writing episodes, like separate stories in a long story. I'm sure there's another word for this. But each separate story, again, what are your first 10 pages? Like I'm working on one, and my next scene is gonna be really quite different than the other. But we should use the first 10 pages. like-
Again, when I write fiction,
Yeah,
absolutely, short stories,
and your next one.
even my novel, your first line has to be the most incredible line you write in the whole story, because if you don't grab them in that line, people's mind begin to wander.
20 years ago, when you'd watch a Netflix or something, the first scene you would see is this big old grand lion jumping out of an MGM logo, and all of the people that were involved in the film, the stars. Now, you watch a Bosch or a Amazon or Netflix, and the first 2 or 3 minutes, you see the action,
They jump right in.
they jump right into it, and then it takes you slowly but surely into the next 10 pages, and while those next 10 pages are going, that's when they're kind of just on the corner talking about who the producer, the director. If you notice, it's really changed, because they want to get your attention right off the get-go.
We were talking before about writing B-movie scripts, and the way we were taught to write them, and people read them. Every 5 pages, I had to have action. Disregarding whatever else was going on with the characters, every 5 pages, I had to have action. And it had to be big action. Somebody had to die, somebody had to get eaten, somebody had to be killed, something had to happen. An explosion had to happen. And that was fun writing B-movies that way. Now that's the way they make movies.
They're all
Take a look
based-
at your big
Right.
blockbusters.
Right.
Every 5 minutes, something happens. For me, how do you write, what is that?
Well, I was like what you were saying before, movies getting short, when they went from 120 pages to 100 pages, I don't know, the movie got shorter, is they took 20 pages and called it special effects.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, because the movies are about the same length, but we really don't need to hear you talk, because there's an alien.
Exactly.
And we gotta
Special
lead to
effects.
And you're
that.
right, because there's still you're still talking
It's a
about a
2-hour
2-hour movie,
Yeah,
except nobody talks.
no,
It's all special effects.
you can't hear them over the gunfire anyway.
Yeah.
And the man to thank for that? Star Wars. He couldn't write dialogue if his life depended
Right,
upon
right,
it.
very stilted, very, right.
Our transition.
But great movies to watch. My daughter's only seen, when that first came out, only saw it 36 times.
I was never a Trekkie. but,
Some of,
yeah.
I was going to ask a
Star Wars,
question
not Star
for
Trek.
some of the novelist writers here.
I
I'm
was a
reading
Trekkie.
a book called Drone Warrior that I picked up off of television. I like this, way this guy was talking about drones in the war now, in the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm reading the book, and eventually it's going to be a movie, I would imagine. But every 2 or 3 chapters, it looks to me like it's fill, because they're going back to the childhood and how the kid learned how to write, to use a drone, and how he interchanged with his grandpa. And to me, I'm skipping those chapters.
And that's, and
Flashback.
2 of the rules that we used to go by, never, ever write voiceovers in a screenplay, and don't do flashbacks.
And I love both. I don't mean that I'm afraid to write them, but I
Well,
love
you should be
movies.
afraid to write them,
But
nobody wants to
I
read
love
them.
movies that have voiceover and flashbacks.
And yet, there were 2 rules, they were hard and fast rules,
Yeah.
you never, ever, ever wrote flashbacks.
But think of all the great movies, like Rebecca, voiceover.
Well, think
Well,
of how
but
this
that
is
was
us.
what's stupid about rules, because they're stupid, rules are stupid.
But it gets them into the mind of the character.
Well, it goes back to this belief, to get back to my academics. Film is always present tense.
Yeah.
A flashback is, by its very nature, not. So it's theoretically impossible to write in past tense for a film. Because or not you wish it to be in past tense, it isn't. It's there before you, it's present tense. So the concept was, don't write in past tense, because that's not how it's presented. By its nature, flashbacks are past tense, so you don't write them. They don't exist. Same thing with narrative. It's not present tense, it's not there in front of you.
But you can start with something and move it forward,
And look,
like somebody
how many
growing
times in
up.
my life have I heard people who talk about writing, especially scripts, every line has to move the plot forward or develop character. If it doesn't do one of those two things, throw it out.
Mhm.
The other big important line always, that we always should remember is, and I forget who, the first time I ever heard it, writing is rewriting, right? So, whenever I write, I have a tendency to always write too long, write too much, write crap that in my brain, but doesn't belong in the script. So, I was always taught that start your scene way later than you think and end it way sooner than you think.
Come late, leave early.
That's what you should do. And when I rewrite, that's what I do. I go back to look at it and say, I came into this scene way, way, way too early. Get rid of all this crap. Start the scene on a bang. Start the scene on what the scene's about. When I directed, that's how I would direct my actors, to say, I would break down my scenes and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish in this scene? How does the scene move the story forward? How does the scene make your character come alive? And why is it important for the story? Why is it important for your character? Should be no different as a writer. That's what you need to think when you go back and you rewrite your script. Why did I write this line? Why is this line necessary? As a poet, I do that word by word. And I learn about being careful about my language through writing poetry. Most of my poetry has no ands or ifs or ors or thens. It gets rid of any word that isn't emotive. Because what I want to do in my poems, I don't want to make you think. People who write or read poetry, I think, and why I don't like a lot of Jim's work, I don't want poetry that comes from the head. I want poetry that comes from the heart. I'm a Sylvia Plath fan. I'm a Robert Lowell fan. I'm a confessional poet fan. I want Robert Creeley. I don't want, although my favorite poet is Yeats, certainly in his head. But every time I read Yeats, a line like the Crazy Jane poems, they get me in my gut. Well, why should my screenplay be any different? If when I read a screenplay, it doesn't get me in my gut, if I don't feel every moment, one of the things that we can do to be proactive about our own lives and about our own work, especially these days, is to make our own work, to make our own stuff, and put it up there. It was much less possible in the old days. That's both good and bad, because part of what has gone by the wayside is the quality of production. The modern generation doesn't look for production values in the same way that I did. I would never put out a piece of work for anybody to see as a film that looks like the stuff on YouTube. Badly lit, poor sound, lousy composition. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to people who watch this stuff anymore. People who make films hardly think about composition. I mean, the big guys do, but they don't. I mean, look at the YouTube stuff. It's crap. But it has interesting content, and content is king. And because they're only gonna watch it for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So, why can't we make our own stuff? Why can't we make 5 or 7 minute films? And I think it's, for most of us in this room, that's the way we should go. Less possible here in the desert than when I was in Los Angeles. I could draw on 30 years of friendships and people who owed me favors. I could call up a DP and say, Eric, I want to do a film. I need a day of your time. I've given you a lot of work. Don't give me any shit. Come here for free. And he'd do it. And he'd bring his crew. And he'd bring his lights. And I could call up a gaffer because I've hired a gaffer 8,000 times. And he owes me. I don't know that same group out here, and I don't know if those people exist out here. But one of the things we should do is find them.
We have them in,
And
we have them in
create
our
our own,
organization.
create our own cooperative. Make our own movies. Make our own work. Make our own work come to life. Will it make you money? Maybe not. Probably not. Will it bring you joy? You betcha. Will it be the fruition of your work? Yes. If you're writing a screenplay, a 5-minute screenplay, and you see it up there, and it's good, and people laugh, or people cry, or people respond, nothing better in life.
But isn't it true, it's not quite as expensive now, right, with all the new
The tools are
technology?
cheap.
To me, it's a.
You get a green screen.
Look at that little stupid thing. You can make a movie with that.
Exactly.
There
Well-
are film schools here in the desert, are there?
Yeah.
Film students.
Yeah, there's a
I don't
new,
know.
there's a new,
I
there's
haven't-
2 new
I'm-
programs.
We haven't put in one, maybe.
I'm so new out here, I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff out here.
There's a lot of stuff in the desert, and actually, College of the Desert is in the process of just opening a new program because they're going to be working with Palm Springs Unified School District, and she called the other day or sent me an email, and so we're gonna be going and having a meeting with them on what's happening there.
So you've never had that
UCR
there, right? You've
no,
never had.
College of the Desert's never had it.
This is all brand new.
UCR has a program, and so I've been talking to them. We're
Yeah,
still
UC Riverside
trying to
has a
break ground,
program,
yeah.
absolutely.
They're out
Because it
here.
seems like a film student might want to help work with us.
Well, and
Absolutely.
the
That's
thing
where-
is that Coachella Valley
I
Unified
have-
School District has a tremendous program, and that's where he got all the students with equipment to shoot everything for UI Skies Cooking, because the school districts, but nobody thought Coachella Valley Unified had a system as big as they do, because we were aware that Cathedral City and Palm Springs had it, but it's amazing that right now Indio High School is 2 years into a program. Indio Middle School has a feeder program that's feeding into that. And so there's a lot that's out here. Paul and a lot of our members already have things. We have like 3 members that have studios, you know, so.
If I have any value to this group at all, and I hope I do, one of my best values would be I'm highly skilled at production. And we'd be more than happy to help out anybody that needs to learn or needs assistance on doing production.
Well, that's one of the things that we had talked about when we met, was like, you know, with the Script Fest, and I'll let Catherine give us some more information on that, was the possibility that once we get all these actors into this, and we're going to be moving in January into the filming of these, maybe filming these Script Fests, maybe it's something that if 10 pages of your script is getting filmed, it could become a teaser. And then, you know, we could use that to help advertise or promote your films, you know, and things like that. So that's one aspect of Script Fest, you know, reading 10 to 12 pages of your script, you know, and putting it out there. We're running into some problems because people are saying, you know, when you're asked to submit 10 or 12 pages, it's your decision to decide which of those 10 or 12. Don't go sending a script to somebody and saying,
I have to comment on this, because looking at your, and it makes sense, this, down at the bottom of your syllabus here. Be aware that most people who read your script will read about the first 10 pages and perhaps the last 2 or 3 pages. If you don't grab the reader in the first 5, you're done, which we've all known and we've all heard. So I'm sitting here thinking about the Script Fest. Maybe we should focus on the first 10 pages of people's scripts, because they are the most important. Originally, I thought, oh, let's extract 10 to 12 pages from wherever you want. I was talking with Andrew Kaplan about this.
Well, if you have a writing contest, they always ask for the first
Yeah,
page
really.
1 through 10
You
or
know about
something.
novel
They never
writing.
say just anywhere in your novel.
No,
Yeah,
you
so
can't do that because.
I would like to take a vote, because it's strongly my opinion that we should focus on the first 10 pages of people's scripts. And having said that, there are a lot of mistakes to be made in those first 10 pages. We did this, I don't know if you saw this, we did this a couple weeks ago over at La Quinta. I'll give it to you. And we did 4 scripts, and the fellow's a good writer, but I would say maybe the first
page and a half.
6 pages, more than that, went on and on and on, was all the setup and all the, and the actors stood up there just flipping pages, waiting to say something, and it was,
That script will never get read by a producer or an actor.
I was in the back looking around, and he's a good writer, this guy's smart, but I was looking around, people going, oh, and they're looking at their phones, because it went on and on and on, so what about first 10 good pages of everybody's script in this room, and that's how we should do a Script Fest.
A Taste of Reality, Mel Brooks' most successful movie is Spaceballs.
Oh, that's scary.
That's paid his bills for a long time.
Maybe that's for that
Well,
15-year-old male.
It's still being shown on television.
I was told it was first 10 pages because the producers knew that the audience had 10 minutes to watch a movie and decide whether they were going to stay or leave. And they said producers know that. So if you can't keep the audience past 10 minutes, he's out of money and they're out of the theater.
And it's all about the readers. We're talking about.
It's
the people that
mostly the
read.
readers and most of the
readers.
producers. One of my big failures as a director, as a film director, and I don't consider myself a particularly successful film director. I never made the transition between being a theater director and a film director properly, although I love film. And part of it is, when you go into a theater and you sit down in a live performance, you don't expect to be wowed in those first 10 minutes. You have an expectation of the drama being built. You have an expectation of peaks and valleys. You have an expectation of emotion being given to you, not immediate excitement. I never got past that. That's really what I love. I love building. That's not true in film.
The audience has a clicker in their hand.
Who's had the
Armed
clicker in
and
their hand?
dangerous.
But I'm thinking also, people in here, I know I am, I think Mike is, are thinking about writing episodes, like separate stories in a long story. I'm sure there's another word for this. But each separate story, again, what are your first 10 pages? Like, I'm working on one, and my next scene is gonna be really quite different than the other. But we should use the first 10 pages. like-
Again, when I write fiction,
Yeah,
absolutely, short stories,
and your next one.
even my novel, your first line has to be the most incredible line you write in the whole story, because if you don't grab them in that line, people's mind begin to wander.
20 years ago, when you'd watch a Netflix or something, the first scene you would see is this big old grand lion jumping out of an MGM logo, and all of the people that were involved in the film, the stars. Now, you watch a Bosch or a Amazon or Netflix, and the first 2 or 3 minutes, you see the action.
They jump right in.
They jump right into it, and then it takes you slowly but surely into the next 10 pages, and while those next 10 pages are going, that's when they're kind of just on the corner talking about who the producer, the director. And if you notice, it's really changed, because they want to get your attention right off the get-go.
We were talking before about writing B-movie scripts, and the way we were taught to write them, and people read them. Every 5 pages, I had to have action. Disregarding whatever else was going on with the characters, every 5 pages, I had to have action. And it had to be big action. Somebody had to die, somebody had to get eaten, somebody had to be killed, something had to happen. An explosion had to happen. And that was fun writing B-movies that way. Now that's the way they make movies.
They're all
Take a look
based-
at your big
Right.
blockbusters.
Right.
Every 5 minutes, something happens. For me, how do you write, what is that?
Well, I was like what you were saying before, movies getting short, when they went from 120 pages to 100 pages, I don't know if the movie got shorter, is they took 20 pages and called it special effects.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, because the movies are about the same length, but we really don't need to hear you talk, because there's an alien.
Exactly.
And we gotta
Special
lead to
effects.
And
that.
you're right, because there's still you're still talking about a
It's
2-hour movie,
Yeah,
except nobody talks.
no,
It's all special effects.
you can't hear them over the gunfire anyway.
Yeah.
And the man to thank for that? Star Wars. He couldn't write dialogue if his life depended
Right,
upon
right,
it.
very, very, right.
Our transition.
But great movies to watch. My daughter's only seen, when that first came out, only saw it 36 times.
I was never a Trekkie. but,
Some of-
yeah.
I was going to ask a
Star Wars,
question
not Star
for
Trek.
some of the novelist writers here. I'm
I was a
reading
Trekkie.
a book called Drone Warrior that I picked up off of television. I like this, where this guy was talking about drones in the war now, in the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm reading the book, and eventually it's going to be a movie, I would imagine. But every 2 or 3 chapters, it looks to me like it's fill, because they're going back to the childhood and how the kid learned how to write, to use a drone, and how he interchanged with his grandpa. And to me, I'm skipping those chapters.
And that's,
Flashback.
and 2 of the rules that we used to go by, never, ever write voiceovers in a screenplay, and don't do flashbacks.
And I love both. I don't mean that I'm afraid to write them, but I
Well, you
love
should be
movies.
afraid to write them,
But
nobody wants to
I
read
love
them.
movies that have voiceover and flashbacks.
And yet there were 2 rules, they were hard and fast rules.
Yeah.
You never, ever, ever wrote flashbacks.
But think of all the great movies like Rebecca, voiceover.
Well, think
Well,
of how
but that
this is
was
us.
stupid about rules, because they're stupid, rules are stupid.
But it gets them into the mind of the character.
Well, it goes back to this belief, to get back to my academics. Film is always present tense.
Yeah.
A flashback is, by its very nature, not. So it's theoretically impossible to write in past tense for a film. Because whether or not you wish it to be in past tense, it isn't. It's there before you, it's present tense. So the concept was, don't write in past tense, because that's not how it's presented. by its nature, flashbacks are past tense, so you don't write them. They don't exist. Same thing with narrative. It's not present tense, it's not there in front of you.
But you can start with something and move it forward,
And look,
like somebody.
how many
growing
times in
up.
my life have I heard people who talk about writing, especially scripts, every line has to move the plot forward or develop character. If it doesn't do one of those two things, throw it out.
Mhm.
The other big important line always, that we always should remember is, and I forget who, the first time I ever heard it, writing is rewriting, right? So, whenever I write, I have a tendency to always write too long, write too much, write crap that in my brain, but doesn't belong in the script. So, I was always taught that start your scene way later than you think and end it way sooner than you think.
Come late, leave early.
That's what you should do. And when I rewrite, that's what I do. I go back to look at it and say, I came into this scene way, way, way too early. Get rid of all this crap. Start the scene on a bang. Start the scene on what the scene's about. When I directed, that's how I would direct my actors, to say, I would break down my scenes and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish in this scene? How does the scene move the story forward? How does the scene make your character come alive? And why is it important for the story? Why is it important for your character? Should be no different as a writer. That's what you need to think when you go back and you rewrite your script. Why did I write this line? Why is this line necessary? As a poet, I do that word by word. And I learn about being careful about my language through writing poetry. Most of my poetry has no ands or ifs or ors or thens. It gets rid of any word that isn't emotive. Because what I want to do in my poems, I don't want to make you think. People who write or read poetry, I think, and why I don't like a lot of Jim's work, I don't want poetry that comes from the head. I want poetry that comes from the heart. I'm a Sylvia Plath fan. I'm a Robert Lowell fan. I'm a confessional poet fan. I want Robert Creevey. I don't want, although my favorite poet is Yeats, certainly in his head. But every time I read Yeats, a line like the Crazy Jane poems, they get me in my gut. Well, why should my screenplay be any different? If when I read a screenplay, it doesn't get me in my gut, if I don't feel every moment, if I don't word that you do on stage or in front of a camera is forced, if it doesn't come organically from both the situation and your character, it doesn't belong. As a writer, you have to think the same thing. I'm a terrible plot writer. It's what I do worst. It's why I'm not good at collaborating with people because I want my own way. It's why I became a director, because I'm a pain in the ass, I want my own. But I collaborate because I can't write plot. I don't come at a screenplay from plot. Everything I've ever written is first generated by a voice I hear in my head from a character that says, I want to be something. I want to be your poem. I want to be your short story. I want to be a character in your screenplay. And I let that character generate the other characters and generate the action. And I learn all I can about that character and let that character make every inevitable decision for whatever I do. Again, why I could never go to an editor and say, speak it out, because I have to speak directly to my characters, and my characters have to speak directly to me.
You know, I find that amazing because like, my daughter is a vet, so I just automatically assume they have a different way of looking at things, right? And so I was up there, I'm working on my script, and she said, oh, I'll read it, you know. And she goes, I can see it on the screen, and it's like, what are you talking about? You can see it on the screen, you know? And it's like, I write, but I don't connect with my characters, I don't see my characters, I can't see it on the screen. It's like, I don't know, I don't even know why I write, to tell you the truth.
So where does it come from? If you're not channeling it or?
That's a good question, I have no idea.
I think when you are, like, if you're doing this, it depends on each person's writing. But the character you're writing about is not watching himself, he's living it. He's not thinking, I have an accent, I have to have a mountain accent. He doesn't know he has an accent.
That's right.
That's the way he talks. Everybody else is sometimes a little strange, but it's not. I think the problem sometimes comes when we're trying to write something is we are forcing these characters and we're moving them around on the board. But these people are living it. You hear, if you've got a scene of two people, you hear two living different people, and you want to hear their accent. You want to hear how they, you hear it, how they move, so you can capture it to convey it to other people. But the character himself, he's not thinking of, now how do I sound here? It's just who he is.
And I found myself having a lot of trouble writing for television.
Am I too far off?
No, you're absolutely right. To that end, I found myself having a lot of trouble writing for television. I lost a very, very good agent, one of the best agents in Los Angeles, simply because I kept turning down jobs, both as a director and a writer for television. The reason I did was because television is plot. And I was being asked to write, again, showing my age, they wanted me to write episodes for Murder, She Wrote. And I would visit my friends who were directors on the set. Which is, by the way, how you get invited. Television is a producer's medium and it's an actor's medium. It is so because once a character is established in a sitcom or an ongoing hour show, any kind of drama, as a writer, what you're writing is plot because you've got the character all developed for you. And I found it impossible, just for that reason, to be able to sit and write plot. These characters were already established. I couldn't direct these, I tried. The actors wouldn't let me direct them, and they were right. Why would they listen to me as a director when Angela Lansbury has been doing this, by the time I got in there, she'd been in there, 3 or 4 years. She had a character that was making her a ton of money, kept her employed, and everybody loved. And I'm going to tell her what to do? I may have been right as a director. I was dead wrong with regard to the medium. Because the medium demanded that I write to this character. and that this character knows exactly what they wanted to do, this actor knows exactly what they want to do, and all I have to do is write dialogue that fits the plot. So I found myself writing very stilted, uninteresting dialogue because I was trying to write to a plot.
And I would think the audience would get really upset if they love a character.
They'd hate it.
They hate it. I mean, imagine
They
Downton
would've been
Abbey
out
if
with
somebody just
pitchforks
goes
at
off
me.
the deep end or something. It doesn't work.
And that's why I chose not to do television. For years, I chose not to do television.
The lady that just left, Dennis, your friend, Zoe, she worked in Days of Our Lives, I think, and a lot of those series, and so we're
Yeah,
talking to her
useless.
about possibly addressing the group, you know.
What's
that-
she working
you know,
as?
She was on the set with Days of Our Lives and quite a few of the
The gal that
different
just
TV
left?
series, yeah.
Oh, she's coming back?
Yeah.
Yeah, she
She
had
hopes
to go
to.
to work, but she's going to be, we're talking to her about, speaking to the group about some of her background and some of the things there, you know. I have two questions though. In regards to the script, when I open your script, you've got your title page and then this next page is number 2. And so when I final draft in everything else, it's got a title page and then my first page starts number 1. So is there something in formatting that we're missing as far as formatting the script? And then secondly, I know that you've done a lot of work for narrative television. And could you explain what narrative television is, and is there a different format for writing for narrative television?
Yeah, again, narrative television, you're mostly, and most of the stuff I've been writing these days is documentary. The narrative television I do mostly is children's programming. And I've had more of a free hand. Writing for children and children's television is, doing anything for children's television these days has become much more difficult because you're writing for essentially 4 outlets. You're either writing for Nickelodeon, you're writing for Disney, you're writing for Warner's, or you're not, or the Cartoon Channel, or you're unemployed. There's no room for anything else anymore. Writing for television is writing plot, for the most part. What I have tried to do, both as a director and a writer, was not write for shows, but to create my own shows. And these days, the only way you do that, you have to get an actor attached to it. You work with an actor and you write specifically for that actor. There's less freedom in writing for television than there is in writing for screenplays. Again, that's not so much true anymore. I write now almost exclusively, when I write for a living, I'm writing documentaries. And writing a documentary is, the writing I did on reality programs, you're not even called a writer, you're a story editor.
And a documentary.
I'm sorry?
How about a documentary?
A documentary is, writing is funny for a documentary because again, what you're doing is story editing. You're not really writing, you're not creating. I started in the film business years ago, learning editing. And the reason I wanted to learn editing for film because I wanted to learn how you structure a story for film and how you structure a story for television. And nothing better equips you to learn how to structure than to do editing. It forces you to think structure. And if there's anything I abhor in my life, it's structure. I was speaking with you, again, a little bit about my background. I came out to San Francisco, I was 18 years old. I had finished a year of college at Temple University in Philadelphia. I nearly flunked out because I hated every minute of it. I was a chemistry major because I was going to be a doctor. Why was I going to be a doctor? Because I didn't know what else to do in my life. I never thought about being an artist. I never thought about being a writer. I never thought about anything. I came out here to go to school. I worked for a couple years out here. It was 1963 when I came out here. In 1965, I moved to the Haight-Ashbury. Went back to school at San Francisco State University in the writing department, English. Again, had no idea of being a writer. I was going to teach English. There's a profession. So my background is I hated authority. I never allowed myself to have a mentor. We won't talk about my psychology with me and my father, but that's a whole other matter. My father died when I was pretty young. I was 15. So you're looking at an authentic hippie from San Francisco. And that's never left me in the sense that I'm constantly fighting structure. But when I started writing, when I became a professional in the industry, I realized that you can't do that. You have to learn structure. So I went and learned editing to learn structure. Still something I fight every day. It's why I don't like plot.
My husband's a filmmaker,
So then,
As a filmmaker.
editor.
An editor, well, my best friend's an editor. My best man at my wedding is a big-time editor in Hollywood. Won Emmys, Oscars, things like that. And I taught him that. You talk about making a living. This is a big diversion, but you talk about making a living. I was doing commercials in San Francisco. And our company was the first to use certain devices that went directly from film to television. It was called a rinse and tell machine. And we were very early on in learning to do video editing. I was. I was immediately offered a job down in Los Angeles by a company called Compact Video. They don't exist anymore. To come work for them as an editor, and this would have been 1979. They offered me $45,000 a year, a down payment on a house, and a car
Wow.
to give up everything as a director and a writer to become an editor. Guess who said no? Guess who never made as much money as they would have as an editor?
Guess who did what he wanted to do?
But I didn't want to work for a living. That's an aside. Television is all about structure. Whereas in the old days, when you were writing a script, you could be much more freeform about it. Movies, you could write, there were so many more genres you could write. But television, you have a specific time to write for. You have 44 minutes. If I wrote a film, if I wrote it for 3 hours, it's a 3-hour film. I didn't have any restrictions. For someone who didn't want restrictions, that's the way I went. I went television, film instead of television. Writing narrative, all of you as writers know how hard it is to write one good script. Imagine trying to write, at least in the old days, 22 good scripts a season. Used to be a season was 22 shows. It's not anymore. Now, if you're lucky, you get 13. Most of the time, you're getting a pickup of 6 or 10. I have a good friend who writes for Bullshit. They sit in a room with 8, 10 writers, because no one writer can do that. You're not respected as a writer, pretty much. There is no question that television is a producer's medium. And most of the producers, they create their own shows and they write their own shows. So what I tried to do was write my own show. I wrote a really good show for a kids program. It was called WOW, Wheels of Wonder. And it was a takeoff in an old show that I used to watch when I was a kid. Probably too old for most of you. It was a show called You Asked For It. Remember You Asked For It? People would write in and say, I want to see this or that.
Ralph Edwards.
And they would go on a trip and they would do the investigation. So I wrote a show for kids that would take kids to adventures that they would write about. Nickelodeon wanted to pick it up through Universal. Here's what they offered me. Okay, you wrote the show. You can continue to write the show. You get a writer's credit, but you don't get it created by credit. We're keeping it created by credit. You have to move to Orlando, Florida, and write in a room and produce in a room. I swear this is true. That was part of the Universal tour. For that, we will give you $2,500 a show and a 1-year contract. And I have to give up all my rights to the show. Guess who said no about that too? I've been pitching shows for 20 years. I had that show closed. I had a show going at Universal called Funny Bones. It was a puppet show based on an adult puppet show based on a comedy store. It was a very good show. We were in final negotiations. We had picked our spot on the lot. My lawyer was negotiating with the Universal lawyer. It was going to be done by Universal and Disney together. One week before we were both supposed to sign, the regime changed. The guys that bought my show were out. Like everything else, show got swept out too, never got made. That's the closest I ever came to selling a show. It's extraordinarily hard. Writing for television is great, but only if you're capable of writing in a group setting. And sometimes that's fun. Sometimes it's like getting together with 8 people and just throwing ideas around and writing ideas. I've done it, I like it, but I couldn't do it on a day-to-day basis. So I chose never to write for television, and just write what was important to me. I guess what I'm stressing is that there are all sorts of reasons to write. I don't know any of your reasons. But you need to know why you're writing. And you need to know for yourself whether the kind of writing, where that kind of writing fits in. If you love writing a group, you should write for television. If you like being home alone, write poetry and write screenplays. That's what I like. I like being home alone. I like being in my room and listening to voices and listening to music. That's my life. That's what I want. If you're writing to make a living, God help you.
I have a
There's just
question.
no way to make a living.
When we were discussing, the meeting we had, and we were talking about Script Fest, and you were talking about that possibly a channel or something, like how do we as a group go about putting together something where we could have stuff that's broadcast?
Most of my success, I produced 3 films, 3 features. I learned a lot about myself producing those features. I learned more about myself, not writing them, but directing them. Again, I don't know if any of you have a desire to be directors. It is a miserable, hard, wonderful job. It's hard because you've got a room full of cats to herd. You've got this huge production, even my productions, which were smaller. I had 60 crew members. I had a dozen actors. I had a DP. I had a gaffer. Everybody wants to make it their movie. Maybe your script, it may be your movie, but they want to make it their movie. That's the problem with listening to people who give you criticism about your script. I'll get back to the directing part, but you asked that question before. It is very, very difficult to find somebody who is a reader who can divorce themselves from wanting to make your movie and who isn't at some little part of their soul really angry that they didn't write your script. And they want to rewrite your script. And they will criticize the crap out of your script, whether it deserves it or not, because they didn't write it. And how do you sit there and not become defensive about everything they say about your script, about how terrible it is, and how it needs to be changed? And just sit and listen to them and pick out those little criticisms that you know are right. And how do you know they're right? Because 10 different people said the same thing. Because in your heart, when you wrote it, you knew it was wrong, and they're picking on that. Everything else is crap. It's not wrong. It's just because it's not their script. Which is why I don't give anybody $1,000 to read my scripts.
I'll send
I
you
get
the
enough
name.
people to criticize me without having to pay them.
I'll send you the name of that person. Like I said, I don't recall it, but I'll send you. the
That's
name.
not to say that's invalid.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it's a difficult road
yeah.
to choose. If you do not have passion for your work, if you do not have passion for your script, if you do not love what you did, you won't defend it. And that's what I found myself not doing when an actor said, yeah, but the way this should be done is. Wait a minute, this is my movie. I didn't do that. I said, it's what you want to do. Why? Because I had no passion for the movie I was making. Why would I listen to somebody change? Because I had no passion for the script I wrote. I got to the point, finally, with enough ego strength and enough belief in my own abilities to say to anybody that made criticisms, I'd listen to them, but I'd say, it's fine. You want to write the script? Write a script. This is not the way I wrote it. It's not what I was trying to say. More importantly, you give your work to producers. Everybody in this room, I'd be willing to bet, would be happy to listen to a producer say, I'll do it if you make these changes. And you know what your answer should be to them? I'll make those changes when you buy my script.
How about if a director says that?
I'll do it when you buy my script. Then you can make it your movie. Because that's what they want to do. That's what a producer wants to do. That's what a director wants to do. They want to take your work and make it theirs. And that's right for a director. And that's right for a producer. But remember, you're Abraham giving your kid over to be sacrificed. Because it's not going to look like on the screen what you wrote. And they have every right to do so, if they pay me to do it. If they don't pay me to do it, no, you can't touch my script.
Have you had any?
The temptation is so great to let people do that. The temptation is great. Oh yeah, I'm gonna buy it if you make these changes. Bullshit, they won't buy it. And the more you say no in this business, the greater strength you have. The worst thing you can do is say yes over and over and over again. Because then you're perceived as weak, and you're perceived as an amateur, and you get advantage taken of you. I'm sorry, it's true. So, listen to people, yeah, let everybody read your script. Listen, those comments that are made back, I never understood why this guy, if that comes back 6 times, you know it's right.
You might know it's right, but the only thing you really know is that there's a problem at that point.
At that point.
You don't know if what they say about your script is the correct fix.
Absolutely not.
So you have just been alerted that there's a weak point in the fabric here. So you have to go back to your vision and find out, why is this fuzzy?
And you have to fight for your vision every moment in this business.
But
For your vision.
But once you've been alerted to the weakness, then you can go back, either tweak it to keep your vision going, and then you have the strength to defend it.
Also understand something else, that people who are not writers do not understand. There's no such thing as a small correction. You've built a structure. Let's say you're building a house. And somebody says, hey, there's a couple bricks on that second floor, that first floor that I don't like. Can you just fix those? You pull that brick out and the whole house falls down. When you make a change here, it's a small change. I had my 16-year-old Latina. I had a producer say, I love the script, I want to do it, just make her 18. It's a small change. It's a small change. The whole script changes if you make her 18 to 16. People don't understand that don't write, that you change something here, everything moves. The whole fabric moves. You can't make a little change. You make a little change there, you have to go back to page 1 and reread and maybe rewrite.
That's why you can't make their change.
That's right.
You have to go back and figure out why they found a weakness there and
That's
make
right.
your change.
Yeah.
And then you have the solid foundation.
Yeah.
They showed you there's a crack here, you have to go, why is there a crack there? Not move these 3 bricks. Don't listen to that part.
And don't ever believe, look, you know, again, this is the era of participation trophies. It is not true, everyone is not a writer, sorry. Everyone is not a poet, sorry, just not true. Maybe everybody wants to be, and everybody can put words on paper, but not everybody is a writer. It takes discipline, it takes learning, it takes doing it over and over and over every day of your life to become a writer. Don't let people tell you they're writers who aren't.
If you're a comedy writer and you're educated in the old days with the Johnny Carson show and all of the different types of comedy that went from Carson on up, and that stuff to me was funny. And you write a thing like we did, that Wise Guys Cooking thing, and we were in the genre of that period, and the lines were funny, but I would introduce that script to some friends of mine that were a lot younger, and they would say something like, well, you ought to say it this way, and it wasn't funny. I mean, to me, it wasn't funny. And so I come home and my sons are 28 or 29 and 31, and they'll watch comedy on HBO, and they'll laugh at stuff that I don't get. And I'm trying to figure out now these movies that are out, like, you know, some of these younger comedians, I'll watch some of their trailers or some of their stuff, you know, and a lot of them are bombs. People aren't watching them, and they don't go to see those movies because they're just not funny. But they try to, you know, somebody does something on the toilet or, you know, it's that kind of stuff now where it's out of sight in terms of how to get a laugh. And to me, I like the old structured stuff, and I don't want to change my stuff just because the newer stuff goes, but people that are from my generation are still laughing at that stuff. So,
Comedy is so hard to write. I think comedy is the hardest thing in the world to write. For one, it's so topical, and it's so set in its era. And yeah, but what you say is true about everything that we write. Times changed, especially in comedy. Between the 70s, the Carson era, what you could get away with, and then what somebody like Richard Pryor or did, and the way these guys changed comedy to what comedy is now, where bathroom humor is allowed, where it's what millennial 15-year-olds love. Don't get me started on millennials. Who's your audience? Who are you writing for? And that's the point. That's why I ask all of you to think about, why are you writing? Why are you writing a script? Who are you writing it for? Why are you even bothered? I thought some of the lines you wrote were hilarious. I love that one line. It was my favorite line. I thought it was he wrote the line about this mafioso type, his favorite
dish.
thing to cook was broken leg of lamb. Well, I think that's hilarious, but, you know.
My kids thought about
To
that,
an
they said, what
18-year-old,
does that mean?
probably it's okay.
What the hell is that?
They don't think that's funny at all. But who are you writing for? You gotta know, and that gets back to the difference between television and film. When you're writing for television, you have a demographic, you have an audience, you know exactly who you're writing for. You were mentioning someone who wrote for Days of Our Lives. In many ways, that's the easiest thing in the world. Boy, you have such a defined audience. You have 25 years, 30 years of characters that you know exactly how to, you know. I know every line that Susan Lucci should say. End of story.
There's only one Victor Laszlo.
Exactly. I'm going to play both She and my twin, that's easy writing in some respects, that's easy writing. It's not. No writing is easy, but as opposed to free form, the kinds of writing, that's television. Because you're writing for a defined audience, you're writing usually in a room with other people. It's rare that you get to write on your own. And you can rest assured that whatever you write will be changed. It will be changed by the producer, it will be changed by the actor.
You seen the new show lately called I Am Dying Up Here?
I saw it advertised, I haven't
I
seen it.
love that show, and it's all character, not plot. I mean, I love it, I just
Well,
love
yeah.
it.
I wrote
It's about a
a,
bunch of stand-up comedians.
I happen to like stand-up comedy, I wrote
I love it.
a script, again, dating myself, I wrote a script for Artie Johnson of Laughing. It's called Died Laughing. And it was about a comedy club where somebody was killing the comedians off. And Artie Johnson played he was a homeless character. And I sold the script, it never got made, I sold the script to a group of dentists. What can I say? I doubt anybody would think it was funny now, but I love writing for stuff like that. I also did a show, again, a VHS show, believe it or not, with Shelley Berman, called What's Funny? The premise of the show, and that actually got sold to Comedy Channel.
He'd sit on a chair.
The first year the Comedy Channel was in existence, I can't sell anything to Comedy Channel, but the first year in Comedy, they would take anything. So I wrote a show in which Shelley Berman would sit in an audience listening to comedians, and I had a camera with Shelley and everything, and just his comments and reactions about what he thought was funny and what isn't. Now, why the show didn't necessarily work, because Shelley Berman thought nothing was funny that he didn't do. Why didn't I expect that? I mean, come on now. And he's the nuttiest human being in the world. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with comedians, you have, but they are, in real life, the least funny, the most tortured people I know.
Jonathan Winters.
Jonathan Winters. If anybody wants to get an idea of what it's like to sit at a table like this with a bunch of writers, there's a couple of videos of the backstory on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And those guys are sitting there and they're writing the script for each show. And they're talking about how funny one guy's line is, but this one's funnier. And this is how they stitched the show together. And Larry David's sitting there listening to all this, and they'll start cracking up because that line was a lot funnier than this guy's line. And then they finally put the show together, and it's really amazing. You can get that on YouTube. You can see it.
It's a great process when it works, especially with a bunch of comedians. Great process.
But for television, if you've got a bunch of writers like that, who actually does the writing?
The producer ultimately finishes the show.
So the producer's sitting there and he's writing down all this stuff that.
So usually every show has one person who takes all the ideas,
Oh, okay.
puts all the ideas down. And every show is different in the way they break it out. I know some shows in which there are certain writers who write only for certain characters. They know their dialogue for this particular character. So they all sit there and generally what happens in the rooms I've been in, the first thing you discuss is the plot. Okay, what are we gonna do this week? How does it grow from last week? How does it grow from, your producer, the person who has written a Bible. You all know what a Bible is, I'm sure. They've written a Bible. And it has both, if it's done well, it has a season arc and it has character arcs. And you sit within those season arcs and the character arcs and you say, okay, what's this show going to be about? And you decide what this you're going to be. Can you write dialogue for Sergeant Kramer? Can you write dialogue for Jane Doe? And you work out, and then one person whose show it is will take all of that and put it into some kind of a format. Then you do a table reading. Usually you do a table reading. The actors sit around. They make their changes. And you make your final, not the final change, you make your changes in response to the table read. That's almost always done by the producer who is the showrunner and usually the show creator. And a final script, which is never a final script, will be generated from that table. So you got blue pages and green pages, and yellow pages, and pink pages. And then you generally have the producer, writer on set who will make changes with the actor on set. And that's how a television program gets made.
Back in the day when I was at NBC, I was a page, and I worked on the remake of the Colgate Comedy Hour.
Wow.
And I was sitting, answering the phones, because I was supposed to be telling everybody who's calling for who. And during the show, it was a dress rehearsal, and there was an audience, and get Mel Brooks on one side of me and Carl Reiner on the other side of me. And they were talking about how a couple of jokes with a 1,000-year-old man or 2,000-year-old man didn't work. And why don't we do, and I'm sitting there and they're talking in front of me, and I'm sitting there listening to the way they were creating comedy just by talking about what would have been funnier than what they said on stage.
That man is a comic genius. Mel Brooks is a hero. One of,
He's still
one of
working.
my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah. Producers.
Well, my wife loves the producers, and I happen to like,
Blazing Saddles?
I'm
You're
sorry?
not.
Blazing Saddles?
Blazing Saddles is my favorite. And one of the reasons I like that is because I love the way he breaks the fourth wall at the end, which is something I used to do all the time when I did theater. But when I did Zoo Story, I had no stage. I cleared out an empty space. I don't know how many of you know Zoo Story. It takes place in a park. So I created a park with park benches and fake streets for people to walk. And one little sign on one bench that said fresh paint. And I let the audience in first. Audience came in. There weren't enough seats for the audience, so they had to either stand, sit on the floor, or walk and follow the actors. And the only place they couldn't sit was with this fresh paint. And then my character, Jerry, who's the first character that enters, he comes in and he looks at the fresh paint, he picks up the sign, puts it down, and he sits down. And the play begins. The play begins without fanfare, so people don't know the play has begun until the play really has begun. So I love breaking the fourth wall. I think that's so much fun. Almost every play I ever did, I did something silly like that. I did a play called Theodore Morozhak, a European playwright. He did a play called The Prisoner. Fascinating play about Soviet-era Europe. I built a two-layered stage. So stage had, because it takes place in a prison cell, had a prison cell behind it. And then all the walls around the room had bars on it. Audience enters, doors get locked behind them, and they become part of the prison. That was cool. Wouldn't let them out.
I
I
still-
love doing stuff like that. That was fun.
I
That's
still
the stuff I
have,
can't do in film. But
I still have a
anyway.
question in regards to your script with it being the title page and page 2, is that,
Oh, the page one, page two?
yeah,
That was probably a mistake on my part. It should start on page one, and
well, no, because she said. that-
Andrew Kaplan's script is the same way.
So we're just wondering, is there
Is
something
Beyond
in the
Courage
industry
script?
that
That's
we're
on
not
there.
understanding, or final draft is not giving us the correct information?
no, if that's what final draft did, then that's what it is.
It probably doesn't make a huge difference.
That's not anything that will ever bother a reader,
Okay,
page count. I mean, the page count, but not
Yeah.
how the pages are numbered.
okay.
Except in the old days when I used to put my own scripts together and make mistakes and put page 30 where page 40 should have been.
Kristen, did you have a question earlier?
But in the old days, again, we used to print out scripts, put brads in them and send them out.
Yeah,
Everything goes out as a PDF these days. And nobody reads them, not even on their computers. If they're gonna read them, they're gonna read them on a mobile device. It kind of makes me crazy.
Kristen, did you have a question earlier?
Yes, quick note, I graduated from the same program that Shelley Berman taught. I never took a class.
Oh,
from
yeah,
her.
yes, Shelley taught at USC for,
Master professional.
that's how I
writing.
met him.
Really?
Yeah, I met him
Because you
in the
taught at
master's
U-
writing program.
Oh, you were a student at the master?
No, I taught for James Reagan.
Jim
James is a
Reagan,
friend-
oh
James
my
is a friend
God.
of mine.
Oh,
Well,
my God.
he's a
If
friend
you
of
talk to him, tell
That's
him.
how I got to teach at USC, because James and I wrote a script
And
together.
he's a poet.
He's a poet.
I have his poetry books. Well, Small World,
I
University.
have several poems signed by Jim.
My other question is, who gets,
See, and Jim never sent out his own work.
Really?
His wife did.
I met her too.
Met her too. Very nice woman.
Very nice, and the kids too. I remember seeing the kids at,
Yeah.
functions.
He's the head of the master's writing program at USC.
He was, I think they,
Well, that's how I met Shelley Berman, is through USC, through Jim Reagan.
Talk about ages, and my daughter was in that program, graduated from it. She came home and she had a class taught by him. She said, "Who the heck is Shelley Berman?" and he was totally crazy.
He's out of there, he's out there, he's really out there.
It's a
He has
difference
this
between
wonderful house in Hidden
Yeah.
Hills,
Yeah,
out in the valley in Hidden Hills.
He was funny back in the
We
day.
thought he was funny, but the
He
next
was very
generation.
funny.
The
wasn't
next
funny.
generation,
No, she
our
thought he was
generation,
stupid,
kind
you know.
and it's still, the lines are still good. I'm,
It's just not the kind of humor that it's the same reasoning that took scripts from 120